Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Numbers Guy Show. This is session 2, and the Numbers Guy himself, Ron Stoffel, is here on my right.
Thank you very much.
I'm Dennis Holman. I'll be hosting this show, and we have a special guest, Andrew Richter, who is candidate for Mayor of Crystal coming up just this year, the election.
Yes, indeed.
Looking forward to it. I'm in my business casual stuff today, and I blend in so nicely with the background.
There you go.
I didn't plan it that way, though.
Right.
The Numbers Guy does his own background.
But you're not completely invisible.
No, I'm not. My teeth are showing.
Okay, what is our main topic today that we're going to start out with?
Well, what we're going to start out with is we're going to talk about the cities of Crystal and New Hope and shared services. And the biggest one out there right now is the West Metro Fire Department and their joint powers. And
That's the hot topic right now.
It is.
It's the
It
West
does.
Metro Fire.
Yep, it is. And Andrew's going to give us a little background on it, and then we're going to have a group discussion here, and then hopefully work into a couple of other areas of shared services.
Okay, well, the West Metro Fire Department is a joint. Crystal and New Hope used to have their own fire departments, and back around 1998, I believe it was, they did a study or looked at combining the two and what that would entail, what would that be all about. And I believe 1998 was the first year. It took a year or two for them to combine, and they have 3 fire stations in the 2 cities, the one at the Crystal City Hall, New Hope City Hall, and the one up by Octopus Car Wash and McDonald's up there. Mm-hmm. And so since that time, they have had a joint fire department, and they have 1 fire chief for the 2 cities, 1 deputy for the 2 cities. They have about 58 firefighters. Most of them are part-time between the 2 on-call fire department. So it's not a volunteer, it is a paid job. And the last couple of years, it's been a little friction, shall we say, between the 2 sides because they have to come to a joint agreement. Crystal actually pays a tad more. I'm not sure what the reasoning. It might be the operating costs of the fire departments where they are. It could
No,
be
it's
that.
because they base it on the number of calls over a 5-year period.
That's how it is.
Yep,
Okay.
and the number of residents. So they do it. There's a formula that they have, and it's a 5-year average.
So it's another formula that some tax accountant has to figure out.
So if Crystal is more fire prone, they pay more.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
But
like, it's
based
like
on service.
51-49.
Yeah,
It's very,
it is
very
it is
close.
And again, both cities are about the same size,
Yeah.
population-wise and stuff. But yeah, it just is a little bit that way.
But it's been a real, I don't know how to word this nicely. They've really not gotten along well the past couple of years as far as the budget, as far as purchasing capital and those kinds of things. And it's led to some interesting discussions I've heard back and forth from the 2.
Yep.
So,
And I was at, not the most recent, they had a most recent joint council meeting. I wasn't to that one in January, but I was to the one in December, which is right after Crystal decided that they wanted to pull out of or start the clock moving
yeah, there's
on
a 1 year
dissolving.
there's a 1 year
And
dissolving
again,
notice.
Based on that, it sounds like Crystal really didn't understand what they were doing. New Hope interpreted that the clock started, and Crystal just thought that this was a notice period, and then they were going to talk about because the council, in my understanding, the mayor, who is the city, or the, excuse me, not the city, the citizen representative.
Yeah. No conflict of interest there.
No, citizen
none at all.
representative for Crystal, the mayor being on there. And what happens is the council or the Joint Powers Board is made up of 7 members. Each of the city managers is on it. 1 councilman from each is on it, so that's 4. And then there was 3 citizen representatives, 1 from each, so 1 from Crystal, 1 from New Hope, and they were appointed by the respective councils, and then 1 overall that was approved by a joint council resolution.
Sort of an at-large.
Right, at large.
So
but
no,
Between the
so
two
no
cities.
matter what, the elected officials and government bureaucrats are going to out.
Well, they were
Outvote,
44, 4
right.
to 3.
4 to 3.
Right.
Okay.
So-
But now you're saying those citizen spots have been taken up by officials.
Right. And Crystal had done it 4 years ago. Mayor Bowman, when she was elected, I believe, got herself put on that committee, or on that joint powers. And she was just reappointed for a second term of 4 years in January. New Hope had an open position because the outgoing chairman, Brian
Hubbard.
was resigning. His appointment was up. He had a 4 year, each of them were 4 years staggered, and he was up. So they had it open, and I applied for it. I was the only citizen to apply for it, but because of the rhubarb that was occurring between them, the New Hope City Council decided that they would appoint another one of their councilmen to this to even the playing field in their minds.
Yeah.
And during that conversation, wasn't there live, but I watched it. The current council member that is on there said that he would resign his commission if this other person that they wanted to appoint wanted to go on there, because he thought it was very important to have 3 citizens on there. And again, they wanted another, but it was a 4-1 vote. So unfortunately, he lost, and they said that they would call me back in a year if things went down, because they think that they need
Don't change your phone number, Ron. Yeah.
Right.
The even playing field, because now Crystal, and again, from my understanding, it's been 4 years that this has been going on. So it's nothing new. They just didn't appoint the mayor of Crystal recently. They had been done 4 years ago, and Crystal reappointed her.
Can we talk a little bit about, do we know why Crystal is wanting to pull out of this agreement?
Well, I personally, if you ask me, I believe it's personal. I think that the council, Mayor Bowman in particular, has got it in for the
Fire chief.
Fire chief for sure, and the fire chief is Scott Crandall, who's a good fireman. I don't think he's the best politician out there, but I think it's personal. I mean, they'll try to pretend that it's budgetary, but that they were disagreeing on, I think it was $30,000 in, quote, cuts. And of course, their definition of a cut is
Reduction
a multiple
in budget.
choice, multiple choice answer. But you know, Crystal's a city that spends $15,000 a year on bank fees, so I'm not going to go wild thinking that they're out trying to be budget hawks now. I think it really is personal, and I think it really is gotten down to a pissing contest, if you will, between the two sides, and they just simply are just not going to. They want this fight. For some reason, Crystal is picking a fight here, and I for the life of me can't figure out how separating the two fire departments and having Crystal have their own fire chief and their own deputy, because you know no government bureaucrat can do their own job. They have to have a deputy and their own lieutenants and their own all of that stuff, just like the police department has. I mean, if you have a joint police department, you don't have a fire chief, hypothetically. You don't have a fire chief or a police chief on each side. So
right.
I don't understand how it makes any fiscal sense. The only thing I can think of is they just don't want to play together.
Right. Well, it can't make fiscal sense to have 2 administrative functions instead of 1.
No.
I mean,
And another thing to let the
simple as
people
that.
in know, I'm not sure how if that were to happen, hypothetically, I'm not sure how the fire equipment would be dispersed, because they've made $2 million in purchases in capital in the last 5 years. And I know it's in their joint powers
Right.
agreement somewhere,
Right.
but you know, would Crystal have to buy their own? Because technically West Metro owns it. You know, would we get half the fire trucks? Would we have to buy our own stuff at that point?
I know it was brought up, and what and again, this was tongue in cheek, I think, that they talked about, but it was almost like going through a divorce. You know, there are some things that are, talked about in there. And again, it saved, I think, at least $250,000 when they combined together. And one question that I haven't had answered yet is, you talked about it before, Andrew, is there are 2 fire stations in Crystal?
Yeah.
And only, they're only getting half of that. So how do they split up, 1.5 fire stations
Yeah.
where that cuts
It must
off?
be in their prenuptial agreement.
Yeah. But that was what it was talked about, is they would almost have to go through a divorce. And I think,
or sell one of
Right.
the properties was probably what they'd have to do.
but I
and
think Crystal, even before, had 2 fire stations.
I'm pretty sure they did too.
Because I was a resident of that before they, were together, and I remember having both those fire stations before. And again, it makes sense because if you've ever looked at New Hope and Crystal, they used to be one village. They
Right.
used to be one entity at one time, and they split up, back in the 50s.
They split up, let the citizens vote on what city they wanted to be in. That's how you get Crystal and New Hope's border. That's why
Yep.
it's so screwy. So
Yep.
that's.
So
But
again,
that's the time where the first and second ring suburbs were growing.
Right.
Now we've been stagnant since like the 80s.
Right.
We've been stagnant, really.
well, foreclosures were even less, were decreasing, I believe, our populations with.
Probably.
Because I know Crystal had a high level of foreclosure that was going on. I'm assuming New Hope did similarly, and a little sidebar, but so yeah, I think that they have plateaued in my mind as to population. Again, neither one of them can grow. They don't have land necessary to grow.
So has Crystal identified the issues that they figure need to be addressed, or have they stated the problem that they're trying to solve by dissolving this partnership?
I think I would agree with the meeting that I went to in December with what Andrew said was there's a personality conflict between Mayor Bowman and the Joint Powers and the fire station. And I know there was just a editorial by the outgoing chair, Brian Hubbard, that alluded to some difficulties that he saw with Mayor Bowman and working with her over the last 4 years on that. So that points to another one that a citizen had a discrepancy with the way that things were going on. So I think it is a personality. I think Mayor Bowman, from my standpoint, seems to be a little power hungry. In my mind, I would have liked to see, and I looked at the Joint Powers, and it allowed the citizen person to be open. I know there are some other Joint Powers out there. I know for the Northwest Community Television, where we're filming this, they are required to have a certain amount of citizen involvement that has no connection with a city or with the facility in any way. They can't be employees of it or to keep that autonomous relationship that it is community oriented.
Yeah, and to have both city managers and
Yeah.
on there is already you have 2 government bureaucrats, nice people as they are. They're
Well, and two city councils. So there's
Yeah,
4
so
government
that's-
agencies
right.
already. They have a majority. What they needed more, and again, it's a community service. There
Yeah.
should be community input that's on that. It makes no sense to me whatsoever.
the next thing they'll do is they'll vote to get rid of the at-large person.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, the at-large person could be one person
Right.
from each council before.
So
we
it's an
know it.
unaccountable. Then it becomes
Yeah.
it's an unaccountable governmental agency again. That you don't have any community input on at all, other than you got to go through one of the other members. So so that was just if anybody wants to look at it, that editorial came out on the 19th of January here. And alluded to some things that he might come. I think that there was something about he may be writing more on this issue. So stay tuned on that. But
And this was the person who chaired the
Yes.
the
the last, I
he
think he
just
was the
stepped
chair this
down.
last year. Yes.
Okay.
His
And he-
4-year term was up at the end of the year. I
Yep.
believe.
So he should have some intimate knowledge
Right.
of the operation of this governing group.
Right.
Yeah,
he was
and-
on it for 4 years.
And
so-
like we said, this has been bubbling over the past
Mm-hmm.
couple of years, and it just kind of really came to a head last year. They had a big joint meeting. I wasn't able to attend, but I do know some people who did. And right after Thanksgiving, they had a big, at the Crystal Community Center, they had a big,
December.
after Crystal gave the notice that they were going to seek a divorce, then they got back together, and there was some arguing among the lawyers about the legal wrangling of that, because there was a disagreement between the 2 city attorneys as to what constituted a breakup. But they did have that 1-year notice, and then they've come back for 2012, and they've now resolved the 2012 budget. But I think we're going to go through this again this year, what do we say?
So is there a mechanism for resolving this dispute?
Yeah,
or-
there is. They can go to arbitration. That is in the Joint Powers Agreement. I'm not sure who the arbiter is, but they can have the issues between them And look, they can agree on certain issues and disagree on others and have them go to arbitration. I think that's what happened here. So, yeah, it's a mess, shall we say.
And my take on it is that after, and what they had was in the, after Thanksgiving, it was either late November, early December, I can't remember what it was, they actually had a mediator who I thought did a very good job. And they went around and everybody that was there, so all 5 council and mayor of New Hope and all 7 of Crystal. And again, that's a 5-7. So same size city. New Hope has 5 members of their council. Crystal has 7. Hint, hint. Over government reach there.
Well, I will say this: Crystal has wards. I'd like to see New Hope have wards.
I would too. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. But again, about the same size government. Crystal is a little top-heavy, shall we say, so to speak.
And I should say too, Crystal, what they do is by the end of June, I believe, they submit their preliminary budgets, and there was dissent as to accepting the budget. I think there was a 5-2 vote in Crystal against accepting the budget, and there was, I believe, a 5-2. A couple members, I can't remember which ones, but a couple members voted against pulling out. So Crystal itself is not united within its own ranks. There was some dissent there about pulling out. So there, you got the squabbling in the House, you got the squabbling between, you got the divorce, and you got the children being separated or something like that. We've got so. But look, these joint powers agreements are like that. I mean, this is a negotiation. It goes back and forth. You can piss and moan about it, but that's, again, these things I think are beneficial rather than having them separate.
Right.
But once again, it's the residents that are sitting on the sidelines, only able to watch what's going on.
Right. Because again, it's the government officials that are bickering, and what you have is you have people in the West Metro Fire Department wondering what the heck's going on. Are they going to have jobs?
Employees.
Well, yeah.
The firemen.
They went through 6 months of not knowing any. They went way past where they normally go as far as how many people are we going to have, what's their wages and all that. I'd say another thing too, why aren't these negotiations on television?
Yeah.
Why aren't they downloadable? Why is it Crystal and New Hope can sit at the Crystal Community Center if there's not a camera in the building to watch them negotiate my money? Mm-hmm. Then they come to the council meetings and they're all lovey-dovey as soon as the camera comes on with their fake smiles. And where is that? Why can't we as citizens see this negotiation and see that take place and see what one city is complaining about, what's one gripe from another, how that's being worked out? We don't even hear it in the Sun Post. We'll hear a little summary, but the actual, what the sticking points are, we ought to be able to see that as citizens and draw our own conclusions.
Right. And I think that's, both I think don't do a very good job of broadcasting their working sessions, which in most cases is where they do their work.
Yeah.
Amazing, they call it a working session. And that's no different than any other governmental agency is. They do all their work there behind, not necessarily closed doors, but you can get maybe 20 or 30 people that show up at a high profile event. There's maybe 50 at this event, and it was packed.
Yeah, well, and I would say too, they've told me, the City of Crystal's told me that it's too much work to broadcast the working sessions. My cell phone could broadcast that and download it on the computer, but for you people at City Hall, that's too much work.
You may have to do like I'm doing, and I have the same problem with Robbinsdale area schools, and I have been videotaping their working sessions and putting it up on YouTube and stuff.
I think if I walked in there with a camera, I'd end up spending the night eating bread and drinking water downstairs. I have a feeling.
That's okay.
But they are public meetings.
Right.
I mean,
they can't stop you. It's a First Amendment right. You are the press in that regard. So they'd be going against that. And I know a good attorney. He'd get you out
I
real
rip
fast.
on the media. I don't know if I can become a member of it. I don't know if I can claim I'm a member of the media. So
alternative media. We're not mainstream.
Well, I'll work it. Yeah. You're giving me ideas, Ron.
So, but again, I think this is cities of our size, both Crystal and New Hope, need to work together. And again, it's just like a marriage. And again, the divorce and stuff was tongue-in-cheek, but it really is. It's working together to benefit both sides of the aisle. And there's going to be differences. those need to be aired out in the public, not behind closed doors, so everybody can determine that. And then again, I think they need to do things that this should have been taken further. Police and fire are probably good. So we already did the fire. Police could have been done. Park and rec is another one, because we're already doing that with our pools.
Yeah.
The pools, we have joint. The citizens have the same reciprocity, I'll call it. If you're a resident one, you can go to either one of them. They're kind of jointly run. I think the budgets are similar. I don't think it's a joint powers.
Crystal's is much larger.
Right. But again, the park and rec is another area that, again, you talked about administration. Why have duplication?
Right. Looks like there's ample opportunity for pooling of services. So
Oh, Dennis, boom.
Well, the concessions has been an issue at the pool. I sat through a work session a couple of months ago, and I had to put knives in my fingers to stop laughing and trying to scream because of what they were talking about. Crystal cannot make money on their concessions at the Crystal pool. Now, 2 years ago, I know it's funny, but how you can lose money selling soda and selling pretzels,
Ices
Well,
too, they have ices.
for one thing, you might be able to extend the season a
yeah,
little
well,
bit.
you could. I mean,
What
they're
is it,
closing
maybe 8 weeks now?
I think it's 8 or 9. They're closing it in like mid-August, and they don't
Right.
open it till almost the schools are out, I don't think.
After
Right.
schools are out.
Is it?
After schools are out.
June, middle of June probably until
Yeah, but
middle of August.
if you're not making money on concessions, I can tell you as a former business owner, there's probably a couple reasons. Either A, you've got an incompetent person managing who's ordering too much inventory, having too much labor, blah, blah, blah. What they did is in 2011, for last year, they used vending machines rather than having a concession stand, and they lost money again.
So they cut the labor costs out, which could have been the other reason that it could have been is they
Could
were
have,
paying
but
too much money for people to stand around that they weren't buying.
Could
but-
have been, but things were melting in the vending machines, and they had all these issues with that, and they leased some of that equipment. But now what they're going to do, and I think they're finally starting to get it right, is that they've gone down to, they're going to reopen concessions, but they're going to have their most profitable items, not try to serve every little
Right.
thing. And they do have a new scheduling model that they're going to follow. So maybe after
Ooh.
screwing it up once, screwing it up again, maybe we won't see the hat trick. But again, this is the kind of thing they did communicate with New Hope a little bit on this. New Hope made a little money on their concessions, not a lot. And again, I don't want to charge people $6 for a soda.
Right.
It's not about that. But we're already losing money on the pool bonds as it is. The
Right.
pools operate
At
at a
deficit.
25% deficit.
Right.
So, and again, I mean, you're subsidizing the pools if you live in Crystal or New Hope, whether you go there or not. So if we can at least not lose money on the concessions, it makes that not so horrible to swallow. But like you said, we were sharing the pools. Why can't we share the ball fields?
Right. Well, and
What is it about the ball fields that's sacred?
Right. Well, we're already doing, the school district has already entered into with most of the cities that they're in. We have community gyms in Robbinsdale, over at Cooper.
Yep.
A number of different areas. So we're already going that way. Again, why not do that? You have excess capacity of either ball fields or buildings or whatever. We want to use those.
Yeah.
They're community property. Even though they're owned by the city,
It's
they're owned by the
public land,
citizens.
yeah.
The citizens own the city. The citizens own the school district.
Well, if I know the government, it'll happen at a snail/dinosaur pace.
Right.
But like I said,
Well, they've got to take their time making decisions. You know how that is.
Then they'll set up a committee, and then the committee to watch the committee,
Yep.
and I'm sure they'll do all that fun stuff first. So.
no. So yeah, I just think that they're going in the wrong direction. And my take back on that meeting is there was a number of Crystal council members after they heard the kind of, I'll call it a round robin type thing. I think they felt that they went too far, and it was a unanimous decision to come back to the table. The mayor of New Hope, I think, said that we wanted a joint resolution that was the exact same thing, saying we are going to go forward for the next year. We're going to work on our issues. Well, they weren't putting everything under the table. They're going to work on them. They're going to have working sessions. That's what the one in January that I missed. And again, I think there is
January 12th, that was. I missed that too.
yeah, on the 19th, again,
I was
the
ice fishing.
Sun newspaper has an article in it. I haven't read it. I just pulled it down. So there's, Sue Rebler, I think, was there, looks like. So there's some, at least summary like you're talking about. But I don't know why these aren't. They should be able to be. And if they're not.
Yeah, and we should say they do have, according to that article, they are scheduled to meet again in February and in March, February 23rd and March 22nd.
Okay, so these are public meetings again.
Yep.
And it probably wouldn't hurt to have a few more citizens show up at these meetings. I mean, you guys can't be at every one.
I can't be at every one, and I have no life whatsoever.
Well, but if a few more citizens might get involved, perhaps that would provide the impetus for the cities to get along a little bit.
And I would say that getting involved can mean a lot of different things. If you can't make it to the meeting, they all have email, they all have phone numbers. The council meetings, anyway, are shown on Channel 16 on your Comcast. You can write a letter to the editor. You can just keep yourself informed, too. Just watch Channel 12 News. They've addressed this several times on there, not in great detail, but they have kept people updated anyway on what's going on. So has the local Sun Post. Again, just giving info. But the West Metro has its own website you can go to. You can email the fire chief if you want. So there's a whole bunch of different ways. If you can't make it to the meeting, still ask the questions. It's their job to answer. And if they'll answer me or they'll answer Ron, they'll answer to anybody.
And again, now that we have the dates and stuff like that, I'll see what my schedule like. Like I said, I already do this for the school board. I gave them a year to do it themselves, and they didn't, and I called their bluff, and I'm doing it. So if that works out, I'll bring a camera there, and we'll get something up on the website and up on Channel 19 and whatever to do it. Because again, it makes no sense. These are representatives of citizens, and if they're only being able to have 50 people see what's going on, in my mind, that's not the right thing to be doing. We need to have more, and that's why we brought it up. We're doing, again, most of the time that we're doing is on this because I think it's an issue that if resolved properly, we can then start making the next steps. Because hopefully we can learn from this. And again, everything, you always have some ups and downs. I just think that there was something beyond what should have occurred in this regard. And it caught New Hope by surprise because New Hope didn't find out about it until after Crystal already had the resolution passed. Then they let New Hope know. So they didn't, other than they said that we have some discrepancies, nobody told New Hope that this was going to happen.
Why am I not shocked at that?
All right.
So it was a preemptive strike.
It was a tactic.
Right.
It's like I said, this is a pissing contest.
Well, and if we can't bring some speedy resolution to this, there is almost no chance that the cities will work together to combine future services.
Right.
If this can be resolved, maybe there will be an opportunity to look at, for instance, other public safety issues and merging, combining, working cooperatively to help make the system of local government more efficient.
Right.
And less costly for all of us residents.
Yep. So they don't have to raise taxes or cut services. They're always talking about, the first thing they're going to cut is your police and fire.
Yeah.
Well, administration is an area that they need to start looking at because
really, you're going to cut police and fire before a deputy,
finance director?
Yeah.
Again, that's an area that needs to be looked at first. And again, government will not change without pressure. We all know that it has to be
outside
pressure.
forces need to be
because
there.
they're used to what they're doing, and without that forces, they're not going to change without. So, and again, we have some elections coming up. I know, I think both New Hope and Crystal have some. So, if you don't like what's going on, the ballot box is the best place to correct this.
And now it's time to wrap up.
Yes.
Thank you, Andrew, candidate for mayor of Crystal.
You can address it at the ballot
And
box.
of course, the numbers guy, whose show this is, Ron Stoffel. I'm Dennis Holman. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you very much.